All right, we are here. We're back again with Think and Link. We have two amazing guests with us that we are profoundly excited about. We had them on the stage previously. We didn't get to because one of them got sick, unfortunately, but they're back, which we love it. We love that it worked out and it came up so quickly. So we've got a wonderful event for all of you, some really fascinating things we're going to talk about. Current events, things that are happening in social, really fascinating stuff that we'll be discussing today. But I want to make sure you know this is Think and Link, brand new world, something that is an invention of Capsule here in Minneapolis, in which we bring people together to have inspired conversations about design, marketing, brand, social, and all kinds of other related things. The only criteria we put out there in the world is that we have to say the word design at some point in time, which now we've just completed that. So we're good. We can talk about anything else we want to in this conversation. If you want to know more, in the chat, you'll find LinkedIn profiles for our guests, as well as Capsule. And then if you have any questions for them, please put them in the chat. And if we don't get to questions, we will open the chat in the YouTube video afterward so we can answer those as well somewhere down the road. So that's all I have. I'm going to hand it over to Kelly to introduce our guests.
Yes. Thank you, Aaron. We are so excited to have Ashley and Jann here today. We just had a catch-up call yesterday, and I'm so inspired the conversation that's going to unfold today. A lot of topics we want to try and cover. But I'd love to start with, if we could, Jann, Ashley, give a little background about yourselves and your journey and what's brought you here to us today. And Jann, we'll start with you if you could.
Sure. So I'm Jann Parish. I have been active in the fashion retail beauty space now for about 20 years, working for mostly large-scale corporate brands, most recently with Victoria's Secret, prior to that Calvin Klein, and Tommy Hilfiger, where we were responsible for kind of ushering brands into their new kind of next stage in life. Most of my work is done with transitional businesses. In addition to that, I spent a little bit of time in the cannabis space working for a company called Green Growth Brands, and have recently, after having had a taste of startup world, launched with my daughter a company called Glue, Girls Like You, which focuses on teen health and wellness, both from a kind of a storytelling big sister point of view, as well as with clean, superior products, and kind of focus on the next generation and how to take care of yourself. Super happy to be here. Thank you so much for including me.
Great. Thank you, Jann, for your background. Ashley.
Hi, my name is Ashley Sumner. Ultimately, I am someone who had a childhood that kind of left me in this state in my young adult life of not feeling really well adept at connecting with people, and I experienced a lot of social isolation. So I ended up spending my 20s and so far 30s working as a community builder, in part to heal some of my experiences growing up. And because I had such a profound impact, it turned into this now 13-long career helping other people get close to one another, be in space together. And today I am the founder of a company, Quilt. It's a tech startup that is venture backed in the social audio space. So we are a social wellness platform that connects people across the country and soon to be the world through live, intimate discussions on anything from, personal development, spirituality, career, purpose, and beyond. So that is me, and I'm really excited to be here. And I'm the one who got sick, so I apologize to anyone who had this on their calendar and is now here with us today. I'm so excited to connect.
Great. Ashley, we're just glad you're better. That's what matters.
Yeah.
You're with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Well, thank you for sharing that. We're going to jump right in with a question just to spark this conversation. I know there's a lot we want to cover. This is directed to both of you. Just from the background you just shared, there's I think a general understanding, or at least for some previous conversations, we've talked about your organizations both seem to be mission driven, or mission in that they're do better, be better, and you really walk the walk. So, but I'd love to hear from both of you, if you could share your perspectives when we think about how you're marketing, or what human-centered design, which can come in multiple forms, and what your brand means and what you envision it to mean to your audiences. Can you talk a little bit about what you found that's resonating, the words, the visuals with your audiences, and how you're building those connections? Jann, can we start with you? And then Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So the Girls Like You, GLUE for short, was really built around the premise that it takes a community to grow up. What once was a very isolating kind of moment in time, you kind of felt like you were doing it on your own. Maybe you could have a girlfriend or two, which then ended up leading into technology having its role, but not necessarily in the most productive way. And so a big piece of what we're here to do is help dispel the myths with growing up, and also create like a safe space to have these conversations. And so there is a hyper local approach that comes with that, as well as what our global approach looks like, and how we kind of communicate our brand through both social media as well as kind of cultural moments beyond that, and where we show up. So one of the things that we work on is we do a lot of these kind of Zoom activities, where in today's world, because being in person like we used to is very difficult, is coming together and working with like a group like Glamour Gals and creating these events and activities where we we'll have a fundraising event or something along those lines to support the elderly, which is the big mission of Glamour Gals. It's at the very core of this business, and really as I've worked in companies prior to this, is the notion of women helping women, and those who identify as such is really a key component of who we are. And what I'm seeing both from moms of young women as well as the young women themselves is the value in that is what keeps them, or what introduces them to the brand, and ultimately what keeps them there too. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. And it's that transparency, that authenticity that we're finding. It is making yourself vulnerable, being honest, having those conversations.
That's exactly right. And I think that that's the case. So I'll say candidly, at the very start of my career, it was really, I've been working for a long time now. It was this idea of how you're going to fit into this world that was kind of prescribed as a man's world. And, when you're young, you're like, whatever, like, I'll do whatever I'm going to do, because, that's the beauty of having youth. And then as you get older, you start to kind of fall into whatever the rhythm is of what culturally is expected of you. And what I am really impressed by, and what I appreciate most about Gen Z, and I would say the lower end millennials, and really we're all kind of falling into it now, is those old trappings have largely gone away. They exist in some capacity because there's learned behavior, but this audience doesn't want that. They want to be who they're going to be and describe however they're going to describe themselves. That's the beauty of being able to define through your own pronouns and all those kinds of things. And that's what GLUE embraces ultimately, is this idea of being able to find yourself and believe in yourself however it feels right to you.
That's wonderful. Jann, thank you for sharing. Beautiful message. Ashley, let's turn it over to you. You obviously have given us some background on Quilt and the why, and we talked about connections. Can you give a little background on what you found is, in building those connections, and what's resonating?
Yeah. So Quilt has gone through a little bit of a phase. I started it back in 2017, originally as this marketplace that brought people together to have conversations in homes. The pandemic inspired a shift because strangers stopped gathering in homes. And when I took a step back to think about what's the evolution of Quilt, what's the impact we want to have, how can we show up and support people daily, like it being not just a technology platform that brings people together offline, all of a sudden was, how can we be a technology platform that impacts people's lives on a daily basis in the moments that they need to the most? And I realized that the thing that's doing that right now is social media. It is like the landscape that architects most of our reality. And so I was like, okay, well, I never thought I was going to launch a social media platform, if you go back to like my musical theater days at NYU, but this is the thing that's going to get to the most number of people. And basically my experience was, what if we have one goal, which is that everyone who comes to Quilt leaves feeling better than when they came on? And we architect our product strategy around creating a safe space, around creating an inclusive space, and around celebrating people's evolving identity. Because so much of social media wants to put you in this box and wants to create this like economy of self that we're kind of trapped living in at the moment. And so we have this primary goal, and then we have our 4 primary values when somebody comes in, and the main one that is kind of the umbrella one for every single other one is caring, and the building of, you know, the culture of care, both as a team and what I do with my team internally, and how that inspires us to build and create things that then will impact someone's life. So we launched in the past month a campaign called It's Cool to Care. And we have, you know, things like crying is cool, caring is cool, being hopeful is cool, like reframing what is cool. Because we're craving this, but, you know, what does it mean to share vulnerably and to open up? And also, how do we inspire people to learn how to honor and take care of ourselves and also take care of each other? I was somebody growing up where I was told I care too much, and I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand that term. I think women, you know, hear that a lot too. It's like, you care too much. I was like, I don't get that.
That's funny. Yeah.
I don't get that. You know, or like, I'd be in the room, you know, in the startup, raising the money, hundreds of millions of dollars, and something would happen, and I would have an emotional response to it, and that was bad. I was like, I really don't understand how we're supposed to shut all of these things off. So we've built our product, you know, we have pronouns, we have emoji reactions, we have love nudges. Obviously, I'm representing the O in the word love in this meeting today. I have, you know, I have a heart tattoo here, so when anyone talks to me, they feel it. So it's just how this like spreads through every aspect of it. And I genuinely believe that doing good and being good, this idea of what is good, can be as contagious as how something evil might catch and spread. So I'm happy to, of course, expand on any of that, but that's at least the first thing that came to mind for me.
That's great. That's great. And we will expand upon that for both of you. These are great stories that you have to tell. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that was amazing. There's like 1,000 things I want to unpack from both of those. That could actually spark a whole bunch of other conversations. The economies of individuals or the economics of person. Fascinating. Anyway, but I want to go back because I start with Ashley and Quilt and interacting with that platform and going into that environment and what it feels like. And when we first became aware of you, the article in the New York Times of essentially removing female from female founder and not talking about that as much, and what that meant and how that came about and what that was like. I want to just have you talk about that, because it's fascinating how that fits to the, you know, Quilt isn't just for women, obviously, and caring isn't just for women, and these types of things we're talking about isn't just for. But I just give me some background on when that came about and what happened, and some of the commentary you heard, good and bad, perhaps.
Yeah. So it was the day after International Women's Day. And if you are a woman and you are a founder or an executive, or some form of leader, typically people will reach out to you a little bit more in the month of March than they will in other months, right? So like same with Black History Month, right? Same with Mental Health Awareness Month, right? So we get a month. Which is fascinating. And so I had my inbox, you know, grew 30% that month because of my gender and how I identify. And so this has happened now. You know, I've been in startups since I was 23 years old, and this has happened every year. And I've been too shy and afraid to publicly kind of speak to my belief, which is I want us all to be able to identify how we want to identify. And every year, you know, articles come out that say only 2% of funding go to women and only 0.2% go to women of color. And I keep hearing these terms, which are true, But I also have this fear, like I work with a lot of women who are raising capital, and so many of them will say to me, well, if only 2% is going to go, like, should I even try? And to keep hearing that you're most likely not going to get it, I think we deserve a little more like possibility. And so for me, it was just, I personally don't identify as a quote unquote female founder, right? Where I go to a conference and like there's a female founder panel, but then not diversity on other panels. And I know that it's like incredibly hopeful and optimistic of me to want it to be equal, but I'm questioning the way in which we're getting there. Like if we keep saying this separate segment is this thing, like how is identity like hurting us and how is it helping us? And so I made the post because I don't have the answer. I know how I personally feel. I feel like I'm a creator and I'm a founder. That's how I choose to identify. But just like pronouns, you know, I identify as she, her, but we're having this awakening to how we want to identify and how we don't want someone to project onto us an identity that doesn't feel like our own. And so I was raising awareness for that, to inspire people to get to choose. And it caught for sure. I've, you know, never really posted on LinkedIn before. And, you know, I kind of kept going to bed at night and, you know, was like, did it really reach 1 million? Like, did it really reach 10 million? Did it really reach, you know, I finally reached out to my team. I was like, I think I have 30 million views. They're like, no, you don't. I had a goal of like 10, you know? And so of course it started something, and it brought up a lot for all human beings, because people are really proud to be a female founder and to be able to say like, what do you mean? Like, I'm proud to be this. And I'm stoked for anyone, again, how anyone wants to identify, but I'm raising to question what we think is going to ultimately lead to equality and hopefully holding like media and conferences accountable for their participation in calling me a girl boss and what that might do to my career. So I didn't pick the title of the New York Times article, which is "She Wants to Kill the Girl Boss." That's a little strong. I just don't want to be called a girl boss personally. And so that was what came up.
Wow.
That was really well done. It was cool. Yeah, it was impressive. It's counter to culture and what was going on. And I think that's good. I think it was great to see. That sparked something for me. To look at that, because I don't go around saying male founder, boy boss. I don't do that. It would be weird.
Totally, right? You hear male model and male nurse, but those are the ones.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's interesting. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, so but I don't want to miss out my chance to ask Jann about the mother-daughter entrepreneurship adventure that she's on. And I don't know if we can say that you're doing something related to Entrepreneur Magazine right now. It's going to be a big
glamorous
deal.
hotel room in the background. Yeah. So Lila, who's doing her homework in the background right now,
cool.
We are here in LA to work with Entrepreneur Magazine, entrepreneur.com, on a series they have called Elevator Entrepreneur Pitch. So that's what brought us to LA today. But yeah, so Lila and I think, you know, to be vulnerable for a second, I guess about a few years ago when I had left Victoria's Secret was the first moment in time where I had the opportunity to really spend time with my kids as just the mom. It's always been working mom. It's kind of speaking to the way things are identified, right? She's a working mother. Again, you don't really ever hear of the working father because the father just works, and that's fine. And so, you know, I got to take the working out for a second, and it was really a car ride, me picking her up, Lila and her brother Ethan from school, where we had a conversation, Lila and I did, about things that were on her mind. And this, you know, as much as, you know, job change is, you know, difficult to begin with, that one of the greatest blessings in that moment in time was the ability to really get to know my children as individuals. And Lila, you know, she asked these very I don't know, really smart questions, especially for at the time a 10-year-old. And one of the things she wanted to understand was like talking about shaving your legs. I don't want to, do it. I'm like, okay, so, where modern women don't. And she was like, well, I mean, the reason why is because it sounds like you're shaving skin off, right? It's a lot of blood. That's why you do it in the shower. And I was like, no, but the funny part about that was then as we kind of, as she and I, as individuals, and then talking to others, we're finding like all of these general like misconceptions of youth and all of these opportunities for more information. And so rather than getting it from Wikipedia, and some kids get it from Reddit, or wherever else it's coming from, or somebody's older sister, older brother, was how can we create a safe space to give this information to others? And so for Lila, it was largely about how can I also be creative and give these things to my friends and create something that feels like me. And I'm a marketer. I was like, hey, this is white space. And so we went for it. And it was during COVID, almost 2 years later, all the identifiers were set up, all of the important business stuff. But what wasn't done yet was actually creating the brand. And so because we had this pocket of time where kind of the world stood still in some capacity and raced in others, we were able to create this thing. And right now it's focused on beauty products, which I hesitate to use the word because it's really more about kind of self-expression. And taking care of yourself and developing good habits. And long-term looking at general teen health and wellness and the components that fit within that. And so this is just kind of the first step in getting started. We will be officially a year old from launch date as of November the 1st. So it feels exciting to have gotten the amount that we accomplished as we have. And the most exciting part is being able to do it with the most trusted confidant I could possibly have in the world. And hopefully she feels the same way. I'm like looking at her now and she's smiling, so that's good. And somebody you love and trust, and you're helping build a legacy. So it's a poignant and really exciting moment in our time. So yeah.
I love that you both have started with a philosophy, started with a view on the world, and then brought an offering to the table that matches that, right? It's not like you had a product and you said, we're gonna put a philosophy around it. You started the other way around, which is elegant. It's a much better place to start. So anyway, Kelly.
Yes. And we've touched on this already, but I want to dig a little bit deeper. And I know we talked about this yesterday with regard to the recent Instagram news. I think we've all seen the Wall Street Journal. We talk about social media, mental health. We know that's where people are. And when we think about, and you even said this at the beginning of the conversation, Ashley, building those connections, we have to meet people where they are. How do we provide these platforms and these mediums to connect, but do it in a way that doesn't have a negative impact? And we know, again, we've seen statistically the damage that can be done, certainly when we have young men and women and they're using social as a means of comparison, not as a way of connecting. But I'd love to hear, because you've both turned that around to a degree. You're using your platforms to build those connections, to have a safe space, to be vulnerable and to connect. And so just would love your perspectives and your thoughts around what we're seeing and hearing now and how it will continue to evolve, and how you're using social as a means of, again, building those connections. Jann, you want to start?
Sure. So social media, I would say for the brand and for our purposes, is really about spreading the message of what being a teen is about. So there's a combination, of course, of the nail tutorials and the things that are the products that we create, because that's part of marketing. But the other piece is really celebrating growing up. And it's not all beautiful, right? Sometimes it's weird and ugly and, whatever, because that's youth and that's life in general. And being able to communicate that kind of wholeheartedly is really important to us, and to kind of make it funny, like it's a very relatable topic. So like a lot of the things that we do when we use TikTok and we use Instagram and these channels that are, you know, beloved and also maligned at the same time. Our goal is not to create content that is meant to be, the point of comparison is wrong, but is meant to be something that, oh, I need to aspire to this. It's more like, how is this inspirational to me? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important element. Like, if we're not going to put out there just, you know, kind of silly things that aren't meant to help kind of encourage your own creativity and things that you can do with our products or things that you can do on your own. That's where we want to be. And you'll never see anything where it's a influencer campaign or something along those lines that's serving as a point of comparison, because that is not what this is about. And I think also, like the Wall Street Journal article, which has, I cannot even tell you how much interest I've had in people I know who've come to us because of the nature of the brand, being like, social media is important to you guys. Are you freaking out? I'm like, no, this is great. I'm really glad this happened, because it means that what we're trying to accomplish is moving in the right direction. Let's use social media for what it, you know, for the good, rather than kind of focus on the negative.
That's right. Positive impacts. It's not going away. So how do we use it for, right? Yeah. Exactly.
And it's certainly not going away for this generation. They appreciate it differently than I'd say probably mine, but it's not disappearing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jann. Great perspective. Ashley, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting journey to try and translate like what happens at Quilt on a platform that is like the opposite of Quilt. I spend a lot of time kind of being like, okay, so we have this like intentional, thoughtful, caring, synchronous experience, like people come into, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 hours, that, you know, we don't have asynchronous content. We don't have like, you know, there's no options to doom scroll, to like get likes or not get likes, or advertising or any of these things. And so I've been spending a lot of time, I mean, even my most recent board meeting was really around like, how do we take the magic of Quilt and translate this to a platform it's been created for other than, so that people understand that that we have agency over who we give our time to and where we want to go with it. You know, so on a personal level, if you go into my Instagram, I'm only following like ocean images and like meditation quotes, and like my Instagram is really enjoyable, you know, like it really is zen. But that was a journey for me, and I think we're forgetting that we do have agency over this world we're architecting, right? So in the same way that I can have friends in the world, decide who I spend time with, who I eat with, who I walk with, who I work with, like the same thing is on these social platforms. And unfortunately, like this term user that has become super common, except at Quilt, which is not allowed. You feel like you're using this thing, like you don't actually have that agency and the power to kind of architect your reality. But we do. And so we're attempting really to kind of be that known, and only work with and have conversations with people who are like really have like wisdom, and who are showing up vulnerably, and who are kind of leading in this new way of expressing self among each other. But it's definitely a challenge. It's a really interesting thing to try and not follow a formula because you know it works.
Right.
And to stand out and be refreshing and stay true to who and what you are and why you got started in the first place.
Yep. But you're both doing it beautifully. And I'd love to, if you could quickly, because we talked about the user reference and this banishment, certainly at Quilt. Can you just expound on that just a little bit, Ashley, in terms of why? Because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, so I'm really sensitive to the term user. There's a lot of people in my life I care deeply about who struggle with addiction.
Mhm.
I think we all do for different things. Just some of them we get celebrated for, like you work too much, you know. I'm a workaholic, right? And this term user now has become the most, I mean, if I didn't kind of create this boundary, the thing I would hear about the quilt community 100 times a day. How many users do you have? Like, if if I had a nick for every time I got asked that, and I'm like, I have humans, like I have members, they're in the community, monthly active quilters, monthly active joiners. Like there's so many other words we could use. And it became a term because these platforms, the social media 1.0, which we're evolving from at a rapid pace right now into this 2.0 rehumanizing social media landscape, their business models are for businesses. So an individual, a human, is a user of that information. And that's where we start getting put into the box of, I'm in my 30s and I keep getting fertility ads because the type of user I am is, this woman who must want babies soon. Right. So I'm happy to keep going, but that's a little bit of context.
No, but thank you for weighing it. No.
Yeah.
I know we had this discussion yesterday, and it's the same way. And Erin, I know you can add some more context here. The same way we try to avoid using consumers, right? Consuming. We're just humans that are interacting and taking in obviously information and making buying decisions, of course, but that term, and these are archaic terms, but how do we flip it on its head and obviously have, there's meaning behind what we're saying. So thank you for sharing. Just certainly that was some good context. Erin.
Yeah, we are definitely, as marketers, broadly responsible for those mistakes of history of, and labeling people, just because it makes it easier or whatever, to be able to say they're consumers or users, and they become gross terms and shallow, not really appropriate for the people that we're talking about. And if you look at it, you go like, I don't want to call my mom a user. That's wrong. Or my daughter or my son, right? Or a consumer for that matter. They're just a consumer. They do other things. Anyway, I want to shift gears a little bit. Actually, you have grown dramatically as an entity, and I wanted to hear how you're staying deeply connected to your team and in virtual, because everyone is trying to do that, to figure out how to remain connected but distant, but and how you're doing that as you've added to your team. I'd love to have that conversation.
Great.
So
yeah, this is perfect. So in the past 4 weeks, my team size has doubled, and I can definitely say that this is the hardest time in my life I've ever hired. Like it's really, really hard to find talent right now, and to keep talent. Our mental health crisis is grown drastically, and life changes, and to be in a pandemic that we're not even sure is ever going to end now, like it's a really hard time as a leader to hold that space, to take care of self, to find those people. It's expensive as a business to go beyond one state. I've learned that. Last night I got to meet my whole team in person for the first time. I built this team since we got our last round of funding at the end of last year, and I met them in person. We spent so many hours together, and it was wild. I'm like, I know these people, but I didn't know this person was tall, or this person was short, or fully tattooed, or whatever. So, I say that because it's just, hiring is so hard right now. I've put more time. I'm an early stage company. Growth is our sole focus, yet one of my priorities is on team communication and team building, because the investment that it took to find them, to stay connected, like everybody on the team has a buddy. the buddies check in on each other. They let me know, like, if like, I don't know how my buddy's doing today. You know, we have moms, we have dads, we've moved, we've, gotten married, we've gotten divorced. I mean, so many things have happened. And everyone cares and works so hard, that we've definitely been, we take time to quilt, to have a healthy conversation internally, like we do externally, like on the platform every minute of every day. So there's so many dynamics of just kind of checking in, and having fun together and being able to come together when it's safe to. But it's shifted, I now feel like I can kind of intuitively feel them, or I can tell like, this person's usually a lot more active on Slack, like what's going on. So like I've had to be, my emotional intelligence has played a really, really core role. And I think what's helped me during this time. But if I'm going through something personal, I can then all of a sudden it takes me like a minute to get back. And so just kind of managing that and my own mental health while knowing everybody has something going on is an ongoing process too.
Wow.
Can I ask a question? Actually, I think that's really interesting, especially as you kind of built your own thing, Ashley. With that in mind, out of curiosity, how do you kind of keep from projecting what could be going on in your life into someone else's?
Totally.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like everything for me is inquiry, right? Like they have that fun saying, like, you know what they say about assume, right? You make an ass out of you and me. So I just try to like stay out of assuming, and so if I just see shifts in behavior, or I mean, in Zoom, you can tell if somebody's like up and off and, a little less present, a little less vocal, a little less responsive. A lot of what I do is like an inquiry. I have one-on-ones every week with everyone. We have the standardized first 5 minutes that we do like a feelings check-in, and we kind of talk through things. And 99% of the time when I've said like, I think I'm picking up something, but I don't know what it is, and I just want to see like, how are you? They'll be like, oh, you're right. Like there is something, or be like, honestly, no, I'm good. Like, okay, great. Like just know I'm here. So I've been just more in inquiry and question asking, which is an evolution of my leadership style than I was if you can walk into an office and see if like people are good or people are showing up. You don't know, otherwise if you are here and someone else is, in Nevada, they could be totally off that day and you never knew. So I think that inquiry is my best tool. I think is the best tool we all can have to not make a judgment or a projection onto someone.
Yeah.
That was a great question, Jann.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's how do we, right. I'm curious, Jann, too, that same question or similar question that Aaron asked of Ashley. And then you can also apply this to how are you maintaining culture within how you're connecting with your team members? How are you doing this in this remote world, and how is it working? And obviously you have your daughter there with you, so that's fantastic.
That's easy,
yeah, I mean, that's
number one team member.
Exactly. But curious how you're managing that.
Yeah. So, the beauty right now is that we're quite small, and much of the team that we work with is all actually, I wouldn't say much, everybody's remote in some capacity. We have a couple of interns who are at OSU who are new, that we actually get to see in person more than others. But what I would say about that is one of the big focuses I've had throughout my career is that idea of mentorship. It was something that it's kind of been a standout piece of my leadership style, I would say, probably for the past 10 years or so. And with that in mind, as we've made hiring choices, is finding individuals who, one, have the smarts and the capability to do really great things, can benefit from, another leader who can, share the experiences that they've had, but also have the potential to be able to carry it forward. And so that I take very seriously. It's something I've examined as I look at, hiring candidates, whether I'm at a multi-billion-dollar company or I'm at my little baby company right now that hopefully one day will be multi-billion dollars. And it's worked out really well, because really what that has created is kind of a culture of individuals really at this point around the world who take some of those benefits and apply them to their own things that they do well, and are able to continue to learn from one another. And I will say, in some of the large corporations I've been in, that leadership style wasn't exactly a one-to-one fit. And either you decide if that's going to be right for you and you're going to stay there and continue to try to be your kind of true self, how you're going to modify that behavior, or if you think it's worth it. And those are the new questions. And I think, just to kind of to tie into what Ashley was saying, is what makes hiring so hard. Because today there's a whole new set of parameters. Like if you think about, like, even watching movies from different points in time. I just watched It's a Dog's Life with my son, and in it there's a dad who's just terribly unhappy at work, but he feels like he can't go anywhere, and this is how his life is going to be. That idea of being a corporate person doesn't exist anymore, because we have freedom. And right. I think, and I'm almost done, but the digital world gives us additional freedom, but it also allows us to continue to be like, nope, this is who I am. This is the way I want to be. Right. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So yeah, in the end, I think probably where Ashley and I are both aligned is you be your best human, I'll be mine, and let's see how we can benefit things together. And then when it's time to move on, you'll do it, I'll do it, whatever happens, happens.
Love that. That's great. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I knew that the thematic similarity we've heard from both of you. So thank you for expanding on that conversation. Can I, Erin, because I'd love to continue with Jann for a moment. And then
sure. That's great.
I want to make sure that we get this into the conversation, because we talked about making that shift. There's a mindset shift that goes from big organizations like Victoria's Secret and some others to this entrepreneurial mindset. And it's the challenges that come with that, the opportunities that come with that, and that freedom, and following a vision and following through on that vision. But I'd love to hear what challenges you've seen making that shift, but then also what skills have you really seen come forward making that shift from intra-organizational to you're an entrepreneur founder.
Sure. You know, I'd say there's two pieces to it. One, I did not realize how much I thrived on structure until I didn't have it anymore. And that is a really interesting phenomenon, when suddenly you are faced with lots of things you could do with your time, and how do you continue to focus on the thing that is kind of like your baby and your most important thing that you do during the day. So overall, that's been the biggest thing that I've worked on, is really, it's so easy in a corporate environment, because you go from meeting to meeting and you have to be there at 8:30 or 9 o'clock or whatever the time it is for the organization you work for. And there's standards there. So we're creating our own standards, and even the word standard is hard to apply to the business world today, because you can do so many different things throughout your day. As an example, I stop whatever I'm doing between 2 and basically 4:30, 5 o'clock, because that becomes time for me to pick up the kids, spend time with them, get them to where they're going. And I spend a lot of time working in my car. But those things aside, I would say the transition from being able to, there's a budget conversation, but also being, all of a sudden you're faced with all of the things that you were able to rely on others to give you a point of view, or say yes or no, or get buy-in. You're just sitting there and you have to make these choices, and it's kind of you, yourself, and I. And in this case, I have Lila, who's really helpful, but she's a kid, and she's an amazing child, but she's a child. And so putting those pieces together can be really tricky. Like, is it worth it? Is it worth the expense? Things that I wouldn't have even begun to blink at that we do, that we would have done before at other companies, now suddenly are like big choices. Right. But I really appreciate that. I think it allows you to kind of think, one, like the constituency that you're trying to serve, because they're making choices, and where does your brand fit into the choices that they're making? And are the choices that the brand is making ultimately going to serve the person who's going to be I'm like, I want to say end user, which is terrible. It's just a user conversation. So many years of marketing, but that are ultimately going to serve that young woman. And it's a neat place to be. I really like it. And I would say also in retail, you tend to, the expectation of you is you're going to get out into the field, as it's called, once a week, once a month, whatever your kind of business requires. A big piece of our focus is, I am not just like, let's get into, you know, Target and call it a day. We go and we participate in fairs and activities around, we're doing some in Dallas. We've done, we're gonna be doing a couple in Chicago, because that's where she lives and that's where she's at. And it's important for us to remain, like, we live in a community with lots of young people, but to remain active in a much broader scope, and understanding young people and what's going on in their lives around the country and ultimately around the world through these events. And, you know, they're makers markets. And there was a story that I really liked of the woman who founded Schmidt's deodorant and how she was convincing old ladies why deodorant is a great Christmas present. And at these little markets. And I was like, or natural deodorant in that case. It's the same thing now. And it's talking to young people and like seeing how they respond to things is really important as we continue to grow.
Is that Jamie from Schmidt's?
Yes.
That one? Yeah. Kelly and I are talking to her this afternoon.
That's funny that you brought her up in the conversation.
I know.
That's great.
It won't believe me. Yeah, it's very funny. Ashley,
thank you, Jan. Yeah.
That was wonderful. Yes, Jen, thank you. First of all, you are definitely going to win the Best Backdrop Award for all of us, because that is just phenomenal. I know. Yeah. That is going to go on forever. That's so well done. Yeah. That is so cool. I love how, so these two platforms seem to come into our lives at the same time, right? I found Quilt, and we found that other one we won't mention the name of. And I kept going back and forth between the two of them, trying to understand them and understand, because it's a whole new platform in itself. It's a whole new way to interact with people, you know, and why is it happening, and you know, why they exist. And the one I wouldn't get on the stage of, the one we won't mention the name of, because it seemed like it was all this facade. It was all this people promoting themselves, people up there pontificating about how great they are. You had to be on the stage. You had to be this thing. And as much as, you know, in some cases I have to do that as an entrepreneur, but it just didn't feel right. It felt gross. Right. But it was always in front of me because of the alerts. I turned off the alerts and I have not been back at all, which is fascinating also as a consumer behavior around those things. But I found that Quilt is therapeutic. That's a really tough word, but it is calming. I'm curious about new consumer behaviors or things that you're seeing in the conversations, in how you're helping people. And it's very, very curious to me as a better use of social, a better use of conversations, and what people would need from this. So can you expound on that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to this, you know, we have this earlier question around, you know, for me to talk about, like, the intention of this space is for people to leave feeling better, welcome, appreciated, loved, the opposite of comparison, rejection, you know, these things. And obviously there's things that, you know, will come up and we, you know, we can't control, but the fact that our, you know, me and my team's area of expertise is around how to have healthy conversations. You know, it's something I've dedicated my entire career to, again, very much inspired by my childhood and, you know, things I was exposed to really early on. But as a quote unquote non-technical founder of a tech company, which is one of those other fun terms I want to throw off, banned from the island, you know, where we come from, what we care about, what our skill set are is always going to be translated into the experience. And the reality is therapy is inaccessible. There's a stigma to it. It is mystifying. White women over 40 are the primary group who go to one-on-one therapy. Actually, young Asian men are the least likely. Also, we learned in the pandemic, there aren't enough therapists to meet the demand. And people don't really trust and understand the efficacy of coaching, and they're very different. Group therapy is for people with problems.
Right.
So, you know, I don't really talk about us as this next gen mental health platform, although I feel like it's answering the problem around that. I refer to us as a social wellness space because I think the daily practice of coming together in community to share the things that are going on in your head are the most healing and transformative thing that we can ever experience. We can diet our faces off, we can run, we can work out, we can do all these things, but the greatest cause of death is a lack of social interaction and connection. So all of that is what's architected the creation of Quilt. And we started in the home. And so I do think when you come into a quilt, you feel like you're in someone's living room. You know, you don't have to have an agenda. We can't control someone saying stage because of this other behavior on this other Voldemort platform you described.
Nice.
I thought you were gonna like that. No, but it's, you know, like you know, this is something we spoke about yesterday, and you know, Jann knows better about this in your background. I'm kind of an aspiring marketer, but as far as like go to market planning goes, like who the first people are that come on, where you find them, what they care about, what the messaging is. I didn't drop this in the hands of the tech VC community on Twitter and give them a bigger microphone to talk about. Right? Like I brought on deeply spiritual, curious people who are coaches, people who are mothers, people who are geo-agnostic. That created the DNA of this platform. So I think for all of those reasons and the fact that we're really building towards like the number one type of conversation that currently happens on Quilt is someone opening a room, a quilt, seeking support. So they're not the expert, they're not a facilitator. They're saying, hey, I'm going through this thing. I just found out this news. I'm in the doctor's office. I'm celebrating this thing. I want to talk about it. Can you help? Like the number of birthdays that happen on Quilt is like, I know everyone's birthday, you know, and people sing to each other in different languages. You know, there's a sweetness to it that's genuine community that I'm really focusing on making sure, hopefully this level of intimacy and what I'm calling magic, I want it to scale. I believe it can. And it can maintain at scale. And that's really a lot of my work is grow this thing, maintain the quality. And the tension between those two worlds.
That's great. Wow. I want to go to Quilt right now after this.
Yeah, get on. Go to Quilt, go into the mobile app, you know,
do it.
iOS store or whatever. Yeah.
That's great, Ashley. Thank you. I know we only have a few more minutes, but I'd love to ask you both the question, you know, outside of what your own organizations are doing, which are beautiful messages. And again, you're doing good, doing better, or helping people be better versions of themselves. What other brands in other categories, so just generally speaking, do you admire for what they're doing to make change and to do better in the world? A tough one, I know. But go ahead, Dan. You've got something on your mind.
Yeah, so, you know, I think that let me start over again. There's been a huge shift in the way that we communicate with each other and the way that brands have begun to communicate that I really enjoy. There's humor, there's actually seemingly building a relationship with creators, that sort of thing. When it comes to brands that I have been impressed by, that have done some really remarkable things, and I'll start with retail, and I think an obvious choice is going to be REI. You know, the fact that they put people before profit in a certain capacity, even though they're very profitable, I think ultimately is what made them profitable, right? So, you know, plus we go outside more, and there's other macro factors. But I am duly impressed by that, because there's plenty of brands who stand for similar messaging who have not accomplished that in the same way that they have. It's true and it's core to their DNA. And it's to me, I think brands are all people, and that's a different conversation for a different day. But it's a brand that feels human in a really tangible kind of way. When you go in the store, you go online, when you use their products, and when they're closed on Black Friday, so you can go outside. Like, all of that stuff matters, and they stand behind it. They walk the walk, they talk the talk.
Great example. Thank you. Yeah, agree. A lot of
that.
REI, but that's so true. So true.
Yeah. Yeah. And brands are people.
Yeah.
They are people. Yeah.
Yeah. Members of our community.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Humans. Ashley, what's your thought?
I am a proud REI member. I love REI. I love
you.
camping. I love REI. You know, or when you said REI, obviously I thought of Patagonia. I thought of some of the campaigns they even did in the past year. Of obviously, I really love some of the culture, like company culture. But the first one for me that came to mind actually just went public is Aspiration. Green financial service. And I mean, for me, starting to tie back the conversation around climate change is not this like separate conversation, but if we heal humanity, if we like raise awareness and we enter into the financial, you know, institutions, we start talking about the fact that climate change can also like be a profitable business. We start like having that conversation. I think it's really important. And so to see that a company like that can go public is very inspiring for me with that kind of mission. So that was the first one that really, I think, came to mind. But any company, you know, another one is Thrive Market, you know, any company that I can really get behind, like the double bottom line, the impact, the mission, that it's like really woven into the DNA of the experience, not like, I'm okay with it, but it feels more of this like marketing thing. Like, and then we'll gift a thing to that person, you know, like that. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
No, that's great.
So,
great
That's
example.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. It brings to mind past conversation we had when we had Impossible and ThreadUp on here. And then we talked about the fact that marketing, if you look, I mean, people pick on the oil industry, people pick on big industries that are bad. You look at it, go, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing all this stuff. But if you remove the oil industry, you crush an economy. The global economy goes away. There's no way. I mean, so as much as you can say it's bad, but if you look at marketing, you know, what is marketing doing? Marketing is creating desire for things we don't need but want. Right? That's a pretty big conflict from a sustainability point of view, from a climate change point of view, right? But if you're doing something in a business like the two of you are doing, where you're actually building a business that's doing good first and then selling something, you're actually making a contribution. And marketing is actually doing something good. And both the examples you've talked about are definitely doing that, or not both, but all of the examples you talked about. It is something we should be aware of more and more, right? And if we look at and blame other industries, you really should do some self-reflection around what marketing does, you know, and put that creative energy towards things that can do better, right? And continue to improve and do better. So it's cool to see this and to see both of your ventures thriving and doing well. And I hope our audiences can become quilters and and see more of Jann and her daughter out there in the world, connecting with people. And so this has been wonderful. Another wonderful Think and Link event. And thank you both for this, for hanging out with us, and Jann, for being able to jump in, even though you're on the road in a hotel with a daughter doing homework.
Back up.
No, you know, yeah. no, but your fellow entrepreneurs are right there next to you, which is always fun to hear that's happening. Doing homework, I love that.
Yes,
anyway.
and Ashley, this was great. Thank you. It was an inspiring conversation. We knew it would be. I'm excited to learn more about both of your organizations, as well. I'm sure our audience is here. Any last remarks? Any last takeaways that we can leave behind? A book that you read recently that you're like, you gotta read this book, or you gotta watch this show. We like to leave those little nuggets behind too. Anything that comes to mind?
I just finished All We Can Save So continue on the climate conversation, but
Oh,
all we
okay.
can save short stories and poems written by women talking about climate change and its relationship with media and different socioeconomic cultures. And honestly, like reading 3 or 4 pages of it for anyone, I think, can really connect you to the greater vision and the greater collective of even what we've spoken a lot about today. So it's now kind of just this thing I'll carry around with me and just like open and just have a moment with. So I really recommend that.
That's a great one.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to go a completely different direction. So one of the things that we do at home is I read to my son every evening before he goes to bed. And he's not little, he's in the 5th grade, but it's like this thing we've been doing for a really, really long time. And we were just finished a book called The Next Great Polly Fink. And if you have children who are, that doesn't even really matter, it's just a great book. And the story is really about how these children had applied this kind of persona to this kid, Polly. Polly moves. They think he's just disappeared, but he's just moved. And then they run into him again. And it's really this journey of like understanding your person and understanding your individual and how others see you. And it is this, like, the way the author put it together is so smart, because it takes a lot of the common threads that we're seeing today and the trouble we're having with social media and all of those things, and helps. It doesn't talk about social media, but it's like almost a metaphor for it. I highly recommend it, whether you're a child or an adult. It's an easy read, and I think that it makes me happy to see books like this, because I think it's really important for this generation.
That's great.
Wonderful.
Thank you. That's a great way to end on a high note. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank
Wonderful.
you both.
Thank you both.
All right.
Thank you.
Good time. Thanks for everyone joining.
See you all.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.